She also had a photograph of him when he was younger, and in back of him are some of his earlier paintings, which are really color-filled paintings, more like Morrison was. So this is a transitionary piece for him, because later on in his career, he really goes to almost kind of a hyper-realistic undersea paintings. And this is sort of the cross between those two periods. It was exploratory work for him. He was going in a new direction out of that abstraction. So it's interesting seeing somebody go from something so sort of modernistically bound to something that was realistic in some sense. And I've got to think that the whole idea, the whole psychedelic culture sort of permeated his mind a little bit in order for him to begin to wake up to the possibility of rendering an undersea still life in sort of psychedelic way. So, Tom Blackwell is another major, interesting artist who I didn't know much about prior to the exhibition. In fact, I knew nothing about him. But he is a photorealist on the East Coast now. But in the 60s, I mean, he came to Laguna Beach in the early mid-60s, and he, along with a couple of other artists, participated in taking a new drug that showed up on the scene that was being made in Laguna Beach. And somebody had gotten it together enough to make what Dion calls bathtub acid in Laguna Beach prior to the Brotherhood showing up and prior to LSD being illegal. So this kid's making it in Laguna Beach. Blackwell's living there, and Dion's living there, and some of the other artists in the exhibition are living there at the time, and they're all associated together, and they're taking this LSD that was being made in Laguna Beach, which I gather was really good. No, it's really good stuff, really pure and really amazing. And they, were starting this very helpful culture, eating, incredibly helpful food.
Do you guys want to go over there or something like that? You can hear you talking. So
Blackwell at the time is a very young artist that has really wants to be an art star, and apparently, I'm told, had an incredible facility for painting people and drawing, and you can see it printmaking. He just, whatever he did was just amazing. So you can see the effects that psychedelics would have on him at that time, taking off on a traditional still life, and then beginning to abstract from that in some cosmological symbolism. This could be some kind of cosmic aid. You could step back and look at this, in more realistic terms and see the landscape as well. But there's lots of interesting metaphors. I love the juxtaposition between Young and Blackwell here, who Deb, they knew each other, right? Where's Deb? Anyway, so there's sort of this dialogue that's happening between them, where in regards to nature and rendering nature through this sort of sense of expanded consciousness. Why don't we go around to the other side? If any of you have any questions about any particular piece, just let me know, or any particular artist. But one of the keynote pieces that was up at Mystic Arts World, in the meditation room for the existence of Mystic Arts World, was Dion Wright's taxonomic mandala. And it's a stupendous painting. This is not it. This is a feeble reproduction of the painting. We think the painting might still exist, but we couldn't get our hands on it for the exhibition, unfortunately.
It didn't go up in the fire?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, I mean, the reason this sex machine goes from 1967 to 1970 is Mystic Arts World was burned down in 1970. And there's a lot of there's a lot of thought about how it burned down. Nobody really knows what happens, but apparently one of the things that was rescued from the fire was Dion's taxonomic mandala. Much to the, Dion was extremely pleased about that. And you gotta remember, one of the things about this piece is it was twice as large as what we've rendered here.
Wow.
And it was extremely heavy, so it was a huge effort on the part of the fire department to get that thing and lift it out. And it's interesting that they zeroed in on that as the piece to say, and it really talks a little bit about how Dion was integrated into into the community in a really good way. I mean, he had relationships with some of the cops, the fire department. Everybody knew who he was and appreciated him. It was kind of an interesting thing. So, just one of the things that sort of creeps up on us was that conversation we were having earlier about when LSD becomes illegal, and that sort of affects Dion and some of the other artists at the time in a profound way, because they go from this position of being experimenters and consciousness expanders and playing with the discourse of art and rendering art through this consciousness to being considered outlaws. And for taking this drug, it was an illegal activity, so they became they went from being sort of on the fringe to being over the fringe into the legal persona non grata area. And that took a toll on a lot of the artists, I think. And a lot of them, I think, it actually presented a major sort of stumbling block in their career, or the pursuit of producing art and moving on to becoming more important artists later on. A fair number of these artists have sort of practiced art but didn't really end up having much of a career within the art world as we know it today. In fact, George Herms, Gordon Wagner, Tom Blackwell are some of the only people that really end up with a fairly robust reputation, acceptance in the art world, and a way to sort of make a living out of the whole thing. So it's a kind of an interesting side note. Pay attention to the Garrett Stern. He's factoring in big time, especially because of his use of language and being able to distill that. I've got some interesting things here, which I didn't suspect at the time, but David Rosen exhibited there, and this landscape, seascape by David Rosen over on the right-hand side, almost in the corner, was a, I think, 1957, 1958 artist winner award at the Festival of Arts. And it was said, at least I'm being told, that it was the first time that an abstract expressionist gesture, paint handling, was used within a landscape. So sort of an important moment that you might pass by unless you do that fact. As well as the Jane Callender cute little painting of town here. Jane Callender exhibited at Mystic Arts World. She exhibited here beach bric-a-brac assemblage there. We couldn't find that because it's gone. That stuff's really ephemera. It just goes by the wayside. But she did paint this interesting painting of Cathay Frankenstein, which is, in my mind, sort of a precursor to the Mystic Arts World, and it's where counterculture people went to, do poetry and hear exotic music.
That was the Beats. The Beats, right?
The Beats,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. It's black inside.
Mm-hmm.
So an interesting moment in the movie's history, clearly a precursor to the Mystic Arts World.
Right at the corner of Thalia and Coast Highway, where the stand is, right by there. That's where it was.
I think it got shot down legally because there was a nude in the space. Artists were rendering this nude, and a kid drove by and knew his parents, or told his parents what was going on inside there, and they freaked out, called the police department, and they went down and shut it down. There are other instances of censor on the part of the Virginia Beach Police Department. There's some graphic work over there that deals with some pornographic imagery, and that exhibition was shut down by the Virginia Beach Police Department because of pornographic issues. So,
Which one was that?
well, there's. I think you'll be able to find it. It's off center to the right there on the wall. So we have other artists like Huther and Body of Christ, Body of Man collage piece over here.
See on this one, look at
dealing with them.
So it goes through the whole evolution
Right.
to people.
Important social issues that were going down at the time, Vietnam War, some ideas about feminism and Christianity, and it's interesting because this is the first evocation of kind of a psychedelic Christianity that I've seen visually in our culture, and it sort of led to a kind of a born-again Christian movement, where ethos of this kind of manifested itself in a born-again Christian movement in Southern California, including the Calvary Church. So, and then we've got Paul Darrow just to the left of that piece, and obviously a piece called Omniscience, dealing with kind of coming at it at a more existential route, really dealing with what was happening in our coming atomic nuclear age, and sort of the disintegration of physical matter in an extraordinary way, and what that means for man. And Roger Armstrong, who was somebody that was director of the Art Museum for years and years, who I didn't really know this political work very well, but he obviously had very strong feelings about what was going on with the Vietnam War, because it was certainly an active issue at the time. And Roger was both a cartoonist and a visual artist, but this is one of the most hard-hitting. This is the most hard-hitting work I've seen Roger do. So really great to see that. In the center of the gallery, we've got some ephemera to take a look at. At one point, Richard Aldcroft, the guy that produced that light show over in the corner of the gallery, was on the cover of Life magazine, and they found it very sensational that there was this group of people across the country essentially producing these light machines intended to alter your consciousness. So it's a pretty spicy story that I think Life magazine actually drummed up a little bit, enhanced a little bit without Richard. There's one object that's kind of, deals with some of the ancillary history. It's a contextual piece, and it really is giving you a visual sense of what might have been produced and dropped. There's a story that in 1970 there was the Brotherhood and a group of the people involved in psychedelic culture tried to have a big concert, Woodstyle type concert in Laguna Canyon, out at Sycamore Flats, pretty much where the 73 and the El Toro come together now, just off there to a little bit. And the community got really concerned about this happening and really went up against it happening. And it only kind of half came off because the canyon was shut down. You couldn't get in or out. There were thousands of people out there, but the facilities weren't great. And then in the midst of this whole thing, the story is that a plane or a helicopter, something flew overhead and dropped 25 tabs of LSD onto the crowd.
25 tabs?
25,000. No, not 25. 2,500. Sorry.
There was
Yep.
also a guy on horseback,
Yeah.
and he had them in his saddlebags.
Wow.
One bag was Christmas cards, and the other was straight LSD, and his arm, hand was all
Oh my
orange.
God. Yeah.
He was frying.
Well, there's
I still have that Christmas card. But
and there's a brochure that goes along with the show, but I'm sorry we're out of it. But there's a picture of in the brochure which deals with it's a tent, and it's the happiness tent, and people are lined up to go into the happiness tent to get their LSD. Just one of the ways they disseminated it. So it's just sort of touching that aspect. It was kind of interesting. And I'm going to kind of wrap this up with one last artist, and that's Italo D'Andrea. And he's an artist that is totally unknown to me, but turns out to be a fascinating figure. Have anybody ever heard of this guy? Apparently, in the early '60s, he was incredibly prominent in Bermuda Beach and was sort of a force of nature in and of himself.
I'm sorry, what was the name again?
Italo D'Andrea.
Okay.
And he had been adopted by. The story is that, at least from Dion, is that he was growing up in Mexico, and he got adopted by a wealthy Montecito man, because the man was visiting Mexico. He saw this kid doing artwork, and he thought that he was really facile and interesting. So this guy adopts Italo. Italo grows up in this privileged environment in Montecito with all the art training that this guy can afford to put into him, and he becomes this kind of really amazing artist. He also starts drinking, and the story that Lisa Dion tells me is that this guy got so facile that in order to capitalize on the commercial aspect of his work, he developed 5 different painting personas with 5 different styles, 5 different names, sent them out to various different galleries to carry his work, and that's kind of how he lived his life. So you can imagine this guy in the midst of Laguna Beach, a town full of artists, and the sort of awe that he might have inspired. These particular works, I chose them because they formed a nice cohesiveness between them stylistically. But if you look at them, you can see the association with other artists like John Paul Jones, who's working in the area as well. So pretty.
It's a nice painting. It's a great painting.
Yeah, pretty interesting.
Did you find any art by Bill Ogden?
Yeah, there's some Ogdens here. Now, interesting thing is that Ogden didn't show. He never had an exhibition at Mystic Arts World.
Right. They did their calendars.
He did their calendars and he did their posters. So there's, we don't have their calendars, but there's some of the posters he did for some of the events here on the wall. And I think it's down now, but there was a Bill Ogden exhibition up in the beaches as well this summer. So pretty interesting thing to see, because you never get the occasion to see Ogden's work around. Any other questions?
Is Bill Ogden still alive?
Yeah, he's still alive.
Is he?
And yeah, he's an interesting artist. He's definitely his own enemy. So
He still is.
yes, still
Know what you're
is,
saying?
yeah.
Okay.
On this, the one that's reproduced, what was the substrate? Was it on panel or was it?
It was on wood. It was on a panel. He was attempting to visually render all the mammals, insects, take an account of all the worlds.
If you look at the very top, the humans are at the very, very
Yeah,
top. So
right.
it shows you the whole evolution up until the humans at the very top.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. You got to really look at it closely over
You
there.
do have to look at it closely.
Yeah.
That's my one big regret is not having that for the show, but it worked out, in other ways, because other things can stand out. Usually that sort of takes the cake in the show. But
So this is pre-Xerox. These would have been actually offset.
yeah,
All the posters.
absolutely. Yeah, great. Absolutely.
Well, great.
I think Verifax was just being, like 1966, 1967, just being developed at that point.
Great. Any other questions?
Yeah.
About the surfboard, did you not just say?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's another piece of ephemera. There was something that was sort of surrounding it at the time. One of the things that Mystic Arts World did is they had a little store and they would sell T-shirts and other things, incense, that kind of thing. And one of the artists that did a lot of the silkscreens, Starman. Starman did the silkscreen on that surfboard. He's another artist that's still with us and exhibits at the festival and still doing the same thing today. Stylistically, yeah, it's kind of amazing. So.
Because it looked like a lot of the brotherhood came from the surfing world, right? They
No,
no.
it started off as what I would describe as a group of kind of bikerish,
Right.
Garden Grove people.
Hoods.
Gangsters.
Yeah.
That began to take LSD
Right.
and had this sort of religious conversion, and then eventually developed the Brotherhood and moved to Laguna Beach.
Okay.
So the book's just great with
Yeah.
that history, and it's something
No, it
that's
is.
history I didn't know. Now the surfing comes in with Johnny Gale.
Yeah.
And Johnny Gale's a whole other story.
Okay.
And that's one of the points of contention with the Brotherhood, because Johnny Gale went off in a way the Brotherhood didn't like, underneath the umbrella of the Brotherhood. And that's in terms of exporting drugs through surfboards. Is one of their techniques. I mean, they basically pioneered modern drug smuggling the way we know it today. They did it, got it up and going right out of little old Laguna Beach. One of the things they use is surfboards. They take a rainbow surfboard, cut it out, or put something in, seal it up, send it off. Kind of amazing.
They move their drugs within the surfboards.
That's one of the ways they do it. Yeah.
There's a whole
They were big
tradition
on
of
it.
booze. So I mean,
What?
Laguna had the booze running tradition from the 30s.
Did it? Really? That's something I don't
Yeah.
know about. No, I
Yeah,
didn't
during
know
the
that.
Prohibition, there's a lot came in there.
Big history.
Yeah.
You should write the history of smuggling.
And Wild Party. I mean, Laguna was the wild party town because the booze was here and the artists
Oh.
were here. And then
During
the Hollywood
Prohibition.
people came.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
the Hollywood people came for the booze and parties. Yeah, so we have a tradition.
I was on a surfing trip in Mexico, and I had a rainbow surfboard. Coming back through the border, they took an ice pick and stabbed it.
Those things at auction now are like 5 to 7 grand.
Yeah, 1969.
Yeah, so, right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I wish I still had that board.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Oh, it was
you
your
can't
board.
surf it.
Yeah, it was my own surfboard.
Oh.
Wow.
So you couldn't surf after that with it.
No, it was full of holes.
And no one was collecting boards.
No.
Anyway, thanks for
That's a good story.
all these
Is that the same Bob Ross that paints the happy little clouds? Bob Ross?